Hi everyone, we're back. We're on to chapter 42 and we've just found out that the baby is going to be okay. It was long after dusk when Mina and I went out with the remnants of 27 and 53 and a bottle of brown ale in a paper bag. The lights were on in the streets, the air was cold and the sky was glittering with stars. Our breath curled in long white plumes around us. I told Mina about Mum's dream as we walked. Extraordinary, she whispered. She smiled and said it showed that he'd always be there whenever we might need him, but we knew we wanted to see him and touch him again. In the lane, we found Whisper at our heels. Bad boy, she said, leaning down to stroke him. She laughed. All day long the fledglings got stronger and braver. They fluttered up into the middle of the hedge where they couldn't be caught. All day long they were getting worms, and when we let him out, this one just sat grumpy and frustrated on the step beside us. She stroked him again. Horrible little savage, she said, and he purred and pressed against her. We went through the danger door, expecting nothing. The house was still and silent. The attic was empty. No owls, no Skellig. On the windowsill we found a dead mouse, a bit of bacon rind, and a little mound of dead black beetles. We sat on the floor against the wall and stared out towards the endless stars. I really think she'll be all right now, I said. Mina smiled and Whisper purred. Feel my heart, I said. She put her hand on my chest. Can you feel it? Her heart beating right in there beside my own. She concentrated. I'm not sure, Michael, she said. Try again. Concentrate. It's like touching and listening and imagining all at the same time. It's something far off and tiny, like blackbird chicks cheeping in the nest. She closed her eyes and felt again. She smiled. Yes, she whispered. Yes, there it is. There, and there, and there. The baby's heart, I said. It won't stop now. It won't stop now. She started singing her William Blake song. I joined in with her. See, she said, I said we'd get you singing. The night deepened, and we knew we'd have to go home soon. I could sleep here, she said, just like this, and be happy forever. I sighed. But we have to go. We didn't move. And then there was a sudden rustling in the air outside. The stars were blocked out, the window creaked, and there he was, climbing in through the arched frame. He didn't see us. He crouched on the floor, gasping for breath. His wings slowly settled back onto his back. Skellig, I hissed. He turned his moon-pale face towards us. Michael, Mina, he said. His voice was shallow, thin, strained, but a smile was forming on his face. I held out the paper bag. We brought you this, Skellig, 27 and 53. Huh. I opened the bag and we took it to him. We knelt at his side. He hooked his long curved finger into the food, lifted out a string of sauce and pork and bean sprouts. He licked it from his finger with his long pale tongue. Sweetest of nectars, he replied. Food of the gods. And this, I said. I snapped the top of the bottle, and he let me trickle the beer into his open mouth. Thought it was cold mice for supper, and I've come home to find a banquet. He ate again, sighed with contentment. Pair of angels, he said. That's what you are. We watched him eat and drink, saw him gathering his strength. You went to my sister, I said. He laughed. Pretty little thing. You made her strong. That one's glittering with life, heart like fire. It was her that gave the strength to me. He sipped at the beer again. But I'm worn out now, he said. Knackered. Then he reached out and touched Mina's face, then mine. But I'm getting strong, thanks to the angels and the owls. He put the food and drink aside and leaned against the wall. We sat in a tiny circle, the three of us, and for minutes we just watched each other and smiled. You're going away, I said at last. He closed his eyes and nodded. Where will you go? I said. He shrugged, pointed out to the sky. Somewhere, he said. I touched his dry, cold hand. What are you? I whispered. He shrugged again. Something, he said. Something like you, something like a beast, something like a bird, something like an angel. He laughed. Something like that. He smiled. Let's stand up, he said. We made our circle, and we held each other tight. We looked deep into each other's eyes, and we began to turn. Our hearts and breath were together. We turned and turned, until the ghostly wings rose from Mina's back and mine, until we felt ourselves being raised, until we seemed to turn and dance in the empty air. And then it ended, and we came to earth again. We'll remember forever, said Mina. Skellig leaned forward and hugged us both. He licked a drop of red sauce from his lips. "Thank you for 27 and 53, he said. "Thank you for giving me my life again. Now you have to go home." We watched him as we walked towards the door and as we pulled it open. We peered through as we slowly pulled it closed. He gazed back at us with his tender eyes. Then we silently went down through the house and we stepped out with Whisper into the astounding night. Chapter 43. I was brilliant at school the next day. Nobody could get the ball away from me. I did body swerves and dribbles and flicks. I skipped over tackles, backheeled the ball to my mates, scored with diving headers and with long shots curled into the corners of the net. After the bell went, we were trailing back to the school across the field. Leaky ran after me. "You got lucky," he said. "You'll never play like that again." I laughed. "Luck? What about this then?" I dropped the ball and dribbled it round him. I flicked it between his legs and ran on with it. Then he got me with a thumping tackle on the back of my legs that sent us both sprawling. "Foul!" I shouted. We started wrestling, rolling over and over on the grass. He was bigger than me, and he pinned me down, sat over me, pressed my shoulders into the ground. He was grinning. "Say it again," he said. "Foul!" He lifted his fist like he was going to smash me in the face, but then he just laughed and flopped down and lay beside me. "You were brilliant," he said. We lay there laughing. Then Mrs. Dando started yelling, "Get in, you two! You're going to be late." We walked together towards the school. "It's like you've been miles and miles away," he said. "I know," I said. "Would you tell me about it?" he said. We paused, and I looked at him, and I knew he really wanted to know. "Someday I'll tell you everything." We saw Coot in the school doorway waiting for us. "Might even tell him," I said, "if I think he might believe it." Then Mrs. Dando was yelling again. "Come on, you two, get in." Chapter 44. That evening, and the evenings that followed, I helped Dad in the house. I mixed wallpaper paste for him and carefully painted door frames and window frames with him. We went to see Mum and the baby in hospital. The baby soon came out of her long sleep, and she got stronger and stronger. They took the wires and the tubes out of her, and they switched off the machine. The bandages on her chest were smaller and smaller. Every evening she sat in my lap, twisting and turning and gurgling. She learned how to stick her tongue out at us, and her mouth and eyes started to smile. "Look at her," we'd say, "little devil." And Mum would laugh and say, "Watch out, we're coming home soon." I used to look for Dr. McNabola, but I never saw him again. We had lots of Chinese takeaways. Dad winked and said we had to keep it quiet or Mum would have us on salad for a month. I poked his stomach. "Might be an idea, Fatso." "You don't want them then?" he said. "No more 27 and 53? "That's right, Fatso," I said. "I'll have 19 and 42 instead." "Oh, bit of imagination, eh?" After we'd eaten, I'd go to Mina's. We drew and painted on her kitchen table. We read William Blake, and we wrote stories about adventures in old houses and journeys to far-off imaginary places. Each evening, Mina used to ask, "When's she coming home, Michael? I can hardly wait. I haven't even seen her yet." We went one more time to the attic before the baby came home. The sun was still shining. It hung low and red and huge over the city. The attic was empty and silent. She pointed to the heap of owl pellets beneath the nest. "Don't go near," she said. "They'll defend their chicks to the death." We stood at the centre, remembering Skellig. "Someone else might find him now," said Mina. "Yes," I said. "I hope they do." Then we saw the outline of a heart scratched into the floorboards beneath the arch window. Just outside the heart was scratched, "Thank you, S." And inside were 3 small white feathers. We picked up the feathers and smiled. "3, said Mina. "One for the baby as well," I said. As we crouched there, the owls flew out into the room and perched on the frame above us. Then 2 fledglings appeared, tottering in the shadows by the far wall. They were round and almost naked. Little cheeks came from their wide-open beaks. We gasped at how beautiful they were, how delicate. Then the owls went out hunting. We stayed for a while. We watched the owls flying back in with the meat from tiny animals they killed. We watched the fledglings gorge themselves. "Little savages," I said. "That's right," said Mina. "Beautiful, tender savages." We smiled and prepared to tiptoe away. Then the owls flew back in and came to us. They laid something on the floor in front of us. A dead mouse, a tiny dead baby bird. Blood was still trickling through the ripped fur, through the young feathers. The owls flew quickly away again, and we heard them hooting in the thickening night. Savages, I whispered. Killers, said Mina. Extraordinary presence, eh? They think we're something like them, I said. Perhaps we are, said Mina. We lifted the creatures and tiptoed out. Good night, little chicks, we whispered. Outside, we buried the mouse and the fledgling in a border in the garden. We stared up towards the attic and saw the owls, lit by the moonlight now, flying in with more meat for their young. The builders will be coming soon, said Mina. I'll make sure they do nothing until the chicks have flown. Okay, we will leave that there. I think we've only got a couple more chapters, so we should finish it tomorrow. So I will see you then for the end of Skellig. Bye.